Hello viewers and welcome to the Passionate Professional series. My name is Tunde Kwikoyi and this is a production of the Passion and Purpose Hub. I'll be the host of tonight's episode. Now, the Passionate Professional series is now in its third episode at the moment. We've had a couple of guests up on stage, and today we have another exciting guest that is here to add value to us. Our guest is already in the studio. The Passion and Purpose Hub is a channel that shares useful content that helps you maximize your passion and your purpose so you can enjoy not just success, but also fulfillment in your personal and professional lives. So if that is you and you're looking to go beyond success and you're looking for significance and fulfillment in your lives, then subscribe to the Passion and Purpose Hub and we'll be sure to provide you with regular content that are related to topics such as significance and fulfillment in your lives. Just before I bring up our guest for today, I would just like to share something important with you. A couple of weeks ago, I was having a discussion with someone and the person asked me, so why are you doing all this passion and purpose thing, the passionate professionals? Why are you doing all of this? And that got me thinking. And what came to my mind was this actually, which I'm going to share with you. What came to my mind actually was the image of this, which is a conveyor belt. So if you worked at a factory before, you know what a conveyor belt is. It's what they use for mass production of items. And that's what came to my mind. Now, what is a conveyor belt? A conveyor belt moves products from start to finish. And I just thought about our lives. Many of us as human beings, it's kind of similar to what's going on with our lives. Many people are kind of like on the conveyor belt. They start from when they're born, then they go to school, then they get a job, then they get married, then they get a house, then they have children, then they retire, and then they die without leaving any impact in life. And I kind of thought, that's not who I want to be. I don't want to be a mass production. And that's the same thing I wish for you to. Just do not want to be on the conveyor belt. I want us all to know that we are specially created with unique gifts and capabilities and talents that we're meant to bring together to add value to the world. And that is, for me, that is why I do what I do, because I don't want to just live a life on the conveyor belt, and I don't want you to live a life on the conveyor belt as well. And that's why I actively search for professionals from all areas of life, whether it be government, healthcare, business, education, faith, media, art, sports, you name it, from all walks of life, professionals that are living out their passions and they're bringing their best to the world. That is why I do what I do. So get ready, fasten your seatbelts, because we're bringing up someone exciting today. So who's our guest for today? I'm just going to quickly share the bio of our guest today. So our guest today is none other than James Roberts. He's a member of the Order of the British Empire. And he was born in Wales, United Kingdom, in the year 1987. He went on to study architectural design technology at the University of Coventry University. But just after his first year at university, he contracted a severe disease called bacterial meningitis when he was 20 years old. Now, James spent a total of 2.5 years in hospital, imagine that. And in that process, he lost both legs just below the knee and developed some extensive scarring on his arms and his hands. Now, he did not let these injuries define his future. Immediately after he left hospital, he returned back to university to finish his architectural design technology degree. And guess what? In the year 2013, he graduated with a first-class honors, and he also had the Chartered Institute of Architectural Technologists Outstanding Student Award. Now, because he grew up playing many competitive sports, such as rugby, representing his university and local team before he contracted meningitis, he needed an outlet. He needed to find an outlet for that competitive nature, and that is how he got into wheelchair rugby. Now, the mixture of the physical and strategic elements to the game was perfect for him, and he quickly moved through the ranks into the Great Britain elite team. He's played in every major tournament for Great Britain since he joined the squad in May 2013, and he's won European Championships twice as part of the Great British team, and has also won a gold medal at the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games. Now he's retired from the sport of wheelchair rugby and is pursuing a career as a chartered architectural technologist. So, ladies and gentlemen, Please join me as I welcome to stage Jim Roberts. Hi, Jim. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you very much, Tunde, for that lovely introduction. Pleasure to be with you this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking out time to join me on this channel today and to share your insights, your stories, and your experience with all our viewers that will be watching both on the live stream and those that will be watching the replay as well. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. Now, I know I've read out your bio, but what I would like you to do is just to tell us a bit more about yourself. Let people just know who the real Jim Roberts is.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so to go into a bit more detail. So yeah, like you said, grew up in Wales. I was very fortunate to have a pretty privileged upbringing. I went to a boarding school in mid Wales, which was an absolutely amazing experience. Got a very loving family that always sort of helped me with everything I've wanted to do growing up, but also being there to sort of challenge and push me and sort of instill those sort of hard work characteristics in me from sort of a very young age, which I'm massively grateful for. And then, like you said, I contracted meningitis, bacterial meningococcal septicemia when I was 19 years old. I was just finished my first year at Coventry University. I was very, very sick at the time. I was working for one of my dad's construction sites. And within the space of about 12 hours, I'd gone from after work, enjoying a couple of pints with friends, to the morning after. My dad came in to wake me up and said, "Oh, are you coming to work today? It's getting a bit late. You should be up." And I was like, "I feel really rough. I think you're going to have to take me to hospital." And my dad, knowing that I'd been for a couple of beers the night before, thought, "Oh, it's a hangover. Come down to work when you're feeling a little bit better." Unfortunately, this wasn't the case. And about, I guess, a couple hours later, I managed to get myself downstairs, feeling absolutely terrible. And luckily, a friend of the family had come into the house and she'd noticed that something wasn't right. She immediately sort of took me to the local GP surgery. They thought I had the flu, in fact, and they said that I should go home. It was on my way home that I passed out, apparently, and then she decided that she was going to take me into the local hospital, where they again said, "Look, there's nothing wrong with him. It's just a severe case of the flu. You need to take him home." It wasn't then. I think then I passed out again in the hospital, where they found a bed for me to try and work out what was going on, because people don't usually pass out with the flu. I believe that it was actually a student doctor in the hospital, Royal Shrewsbury Hospital, that actually came across that this could be meningitis. I'd presented, I guess, quite late with the rash, but looking back, I had all the other symptoms. I was nauseous. My joints ached. I had a headache, dislike to light, but because I was so out of it at the time, not a lot of people picked up on these symptoms by the time I was actually diagnosed. It was probably quite far down the line, and it meant that they had to sort of intervene really quite quickly to sort of give me any hope. I then spent 10 days in intensive care in an induced coma, which was some of the weirdest dreams that I could possibly ever imagine. And even now, when I sort of recall them, it really does sort of make me smile and wonder why those drugs must have been strong that they used, because absolutely crazy. But then the real hard work began, because sort of coming round from that coma, and my legs were black and my fingers were black, and I had sort of all this sort of scar tissue really, and almost scabs on my extremities. It was really hard. And then I guess over the next sort of 6 months, we sort of really knew what the damage was going to be, in terms of what my extremities were able to sort of heal and serve themselves. And it got to a point where I was having dressing changes twice a week, which were extremely painful and not enjoyable at all. Where, yeah, you can sort of see from that picture that I had a lot of I guess, purple skin on my arms, and that eventually went black with the scar tissue, and then they had to amputate certain elements. So I've lost a finger on my left hand, and I've lost both my legs below the knee on both my legs. So it was really difficult to come to terms with, and so I'd had the amputations about 6 months after being in hospital. And that probably didn't help me as sort of a 19-year-old, 20-year-old young man, that this is definitely the hardest thing that I've ever been through. And I went into a depression pretty quickly. I ended up putting myself back in intensive care because I was struggling that much with sort of what had happened to me, and how to sort of come back from it, really. And that's one of my key drivers, I think, is sort of, I believe you have to hit your personal rock bottom before you can begin to sort of piece yourself back together. And unfortunately for me, I'm a little bit stubborn, and my rock bottom was back in intensive care, having suffered a cardiac arrest. So about as rock bottom as you can get. And then that's when the hard work really started. But there was this desire from sort of then on that I wasn't going to be sort of confined by what had happened to me. I was going to get back out there, and I was going to work hard at it. And it wasn't easy. There was definitely days where there were tears and crying and upset, and looking at how much of a mountain it was to go. And for a long time in my head, that I had this sort of notion that I was going to walk out of hospital, which obviously was never going to be the case. But it did take me a long time to sort of come around to those truths and come with that. But I had an amazing nursing team and physios and so many people around me. My friends and family were just absolutely incredible in terms of the support that I got, and visiting and sometimes not visiting in some cases actually probably helped more, to sort of, well, if they're not coming in, then I need to hurry up and get out so I can get and see them as well. But like I said, I did eventually get out of hospital, and it was tough, but it was good to get back to university and get back into the normality. I sort of under this impression that I was never really going to be one to sit at home and do that. So yeah, as soon as I could, I got back to Coventry University, and the lecturers there were really good. They sort of let me pick up where I'd left off, I guess, so I could go straight back into the second year rather than have to repeat my first year. But it meant sort of going back into university again as basically a fresher, really, is all my friends had sort of left the university by that point. But I'd made new friends, got on with the course really well. I ended up then doing a placement year in London for a top 50 architectural firm, who were really supportive. They sort of gave me all the tools I needed to sort of do well. And then I went back to university to finish my final year, which again was hard because I was sort of going back in as what felt like a fresher again, back into sort of halls almost accommodation, living with a bunch of actual proper first years. So I was probably the grumpy old student, but that was still quite an interesting time. And having that year in industry really helped me to sort of focus in on what I could do. I knew that I had this work ethic now from actually being in practice. So the university deadlines weren't as tough as perhaps they once were, because I actually know what a working deadline was now. So I was able to sort of really get involved, and do quite well at university. Obviously coming out with a first and winning the University Student Award, which was really, really nice. But at the same time as sort of doing this final 2 years in university, I guess I'd come across a sport called wheelchair rugby, and I'd started playing. I got into the GB development team relatively quite quickly. I have the disability set, I guess, that is sort of what they look for in wheelchair rugby. So So it meant that I could be quite a high point player within the game. And it was something that they looked at me and wanted to progress me quite quickly. Obviously, this was all around the time of about 2012, so I got to watch 2012 and be a part of the whole amazing London Games experience. I didn't get to compete myself, but I knew guys competing, and I got to go in and watch the gold medal game. It wasn't, unfortunately, GB competing at that gold medal game, but it was just seeing those crowds and seeing how sort of the country got behind the Paralympic movement during 2012 was so inspirational, and it really helped. So I've just got a question from Leslie. I guess it's tough. I think I believe that the human spirit is an amazing thing, and you really only know what you can do until you're put into a situation. And my example I use is sort of a baby. When it's first born, it cries because breathing is literally the worst thing it's ever done. And as you go through more traumatic experiences in life, like you might get a skin burn or like a rash or something, and then that is the worst thing you've ever done, and you cry because of that. And so your body just is something that adapts, and you learn to deal with what hits you basically. That's sort of the way that I see it anyway, and I've sort of been a believer that everyone's incredible. They just have to be. I don't want them to be put in a situation to show it, but yeah, I don't feel as I'm an inspiration as perhaps it's a term that gets thrown around quite a lot, I guess, and I believe I've just sort of been someone that always wants to progress, and so that's obviously helped me. But I believe that your body is an incredible thing, and your mind especially, and will have got this burning desire to sort of make the will to live, I guess, and that's sort of what I'd say to people, I guess. But yeah, to go back to my story, it was so my intent was to sort of continue my professional career in London back with the firm that had supported me during my placement year. Unfortunately, that position fell through due to some market sort of climate changes, which was really tough. But then it opened up this opportunity for me to sort of pursue this wheelchair rugby, which had sort of been growing steadily. At this point, I was a member of the GB team. I just got my first senior medal at Europeans. We'd won a bronze medal. That was back in 2013. So an opportunity came up where I got to go and live in America and play for a Phoenix team in the US League, which at the time was widely regarded as the best league in the world. And I really lucked out in terms of the team that I landed with. I ended up with some brilliant teammates and actual stalwarts of the game of wheelchair rugby. So some real people that I could draw some experience from and learn what I was going to be doing for the next sort of 10 years. And they really showed me the ropes. And I can't thank the guys there at Phoenix enough for what they did for me in terms of teaching me the game and the right way to play it in terms of being part of a team really is. And that's something that I'm massively proud of, is that every team that I've tried to be or been a part of now is really tried to get everyone to pull together and work hard and sort of be collaborative in a way that we can get the best out of each other as well. And that's something that I think is sort of shown in good stead. And I guess to sort of finish off, it did end up in winning that gold medal in Tokyo just a couple of months ago, which was probably, definitely the highlight of my sporting career and something that has been something that I've worked a long time for. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for taking us through your life so far in just about 10-15 minutes. I mean, I was just going to ask you the question that what's been your biggest or your proudest moment, and I think you just mentioned that it was when you won the Olympic gold, and that's you with the rest of the team. I mean, how did that feel, like winning the Olympic gold? That's like the peak of sporting aspiration, really. I mean, everyone wants to win gold at the Olympics. I mean, how did that feel? What did
Yeah,
you
so for me, obviously I've won some tournaments along the way,
Yeah,
and for me, get like as being a part of wheelchair rugby and Paralympic sport, this was the one that I was targeting. It was the one in my head that everyone watches. It was the one that I wanted to win more than any other tournament. It was sort of the only real one that I properly cared about, I guess. So to do that was honestly massive relief once it finally happened. There was a lot of pressure going into that tournament. We'd been known as the nearly men for so many years, so I was lucky enough to compete in Rio, where we came fifth. We missed out on a spot in the semi-final by 1 goal in overtime, and then we basically lost our funding after that. So I ended up then getting a job back in architecture and working for Storfen and Wright Architects, and they've sort of been absolutely amazing, supporting me over the last sort of four years. So the time that I've required off, they've been willing to grant. And then also in my architectural career, they've been brilliant. But yeah, winning that gold medal was sort of like a peak and a relief as well. It was just such a relief that I could, yes, I've done it. Yes, I can thank all the people that have helped me along the way, because I've got this tangible medal that I can actually show people now, and they can hold, and they can sort of be proud of, I guess. And that was something that really meant a lot. The fact that we did all this work for Rio and then came away with nothing, and it sort of felt like I'd let people down, but then to actually come home with that gold medal was just such a nice relief for all that hard work.
I can imagine. And where is your gold medal now? Are you keeping it somewhere?
So I'm actually packing up my stuff at the moment.
Okay.
It's in one of the suitcases. I couldn't actually tell you where it is at the moment. I'm sorry. I probably should have kept hold of it, but yeah, no, I'm currently in the process of a move. So yeah, it's been packed away and it's safe, but it will be displayed once I've worked out where I'm going to hang it up.
How about when you graduated from school? I mean, after you were you were in the hospital for 2.5 years. I mean, I work in the hospital, and when patients come in today, they're asking, when can I go home? But imagine spending 2.5 years in the hospital, and then you, like you said, you had to go back to school, and then your mates would probably have been in their final year, and you were back to the first year, and you're the grand prefect. But you know that time when you graduated with first class honors and you were the CIAT Outstanding Student of the Year. How did that feel as well?
So it was a really mad graduation, actually, because yeah, it's not my favorite photo. I just got off an 8-hour flight the day before, so I was very tired. And it was, so I graduated in obviously June as a normal sort of graduation time, but the graduation ceremony wasn't technically until November, the following November. So I'd spent a number of months in Phoenix, in Arizona, and then sort of was flying back out for my graduation, and they sort of sprung it on me that I'd won this CIAT student award as well the day of. So I was sort of there getting that photo taken. And I had one of the lecturers trying to call me saying, "Oh, you should be at this building to receive this other award," which I didn't have a clue about, because obviously I'd been missing my phone and emails and all sorts for the last couple of days. So yeah, it was a really nice experience, and my dad was able to share it with me, which was really special.
Cool. I was looking through your post, and when you talked about you leaving the sports of wheelchair rugby, I mean, a lot of comments were coming from your teammates, and they were talking about how they were pleased to have worked with you because you had a lot of values that you upheld and things. I mean, just tell us, what are your values? What are some of the things you're passionate about? If you just share with us.
I guess my biggest one is sort of work hard, especially when you're in sort of that elite environment. I guess I know it from being in the architectural industry, where you've got to hold yourself to a professional standard. You have to work hard and meet your deliverables, and and you have to be accountable for your actions as well. So I was someone in the team that I was probably a little bit strict on everyone around me, and that includes coaches and support staff and everything like that. Is I demand sort of a high level from myself, so I also demanded a really high level from those around me. So it was nice receiving a lot of the messages from sort of teammates and competitors and people within the sport, just sort of wishing me the best, and that was really nice to hear. I hope that wheelchair rugby is in a little bit better place than when I first joined. Obviously, it's been difficult with the pandemic and a lot of the competition is struggling, but I genuinely think that wheelchair rugby is going from strength to strength, and the fact that it's one of the sports that sold out tickets for Rio, for London, and managed to get prime time incredible viewing figures on Channel 4 for the final was really, like, makes me proud to have been a part of that journey for the sport.
Wow. I've got a picture of you that I found on your website, and I found this picture really interesting. And you're talking about how this was your first international competition, and that was you knocked down, and it just kind of tells the story that when life knocks you down, you have to pick yourself up. I mean, this was your first international competition. And a lot of people have been asking the questions in the chat box, like, what keeps you going? What inspires you to keep going? What makes you pick yourself back up and keep going? And just tell us about that. I mean, how do you overcome the limitations that come your way? I mean, the truth of the matter is that physical limitations are not as strong as mental limitations, but you're able to overcome both physical and mental limitations. So how do you do it?
Yeah, so like you said, this is the very first GB senior tournament that I was a part of, and that was quite a good memory, because I probably got hit over by one of the smaller guys on the Canadian team, but this hit me in such a way that it hurt. But like these sort of collisions happen a lot in wheelchair rugby, and you soon quickly learn that you're a lot tougher than you are fragile. So you soon learn to pick yourself back up. And in wheelchair rugby especially, as I'm one of the more functional players, I guess, in the sport, there's people with a lot worse disabilities than me that play, and you see them getting on with their life and doing things that perhaps I didn't know how to do, and that was something that really helped my life skills when I first sort of got involved with the sport. You'd see people doing things in their chair, like how they transferred, how they sort of moved around, how they drove, and that was something that really sort of inspired me to be better and to sort of like try and learn a lot of these skills that these guys were doing. And so for me, sport was massive in terms of just like not just developing that or a release for that competitive drive, but developing life skills as well. I'm a massive believer in the teamwork element. Was instilled in me right from when I was in school playing school sport. You sort of learn to sort of come together as a team, and you make really good bonds with people. And I think it's helped my professional life as well. Sort of knowing there's deadlines, knowing that I have to hit certain targets, whether that be physical or mental sort of targets as well. So I believe it's helped me.
Yeah, that was just what I was going to ask you next, because we have a lot of people, young people that play sports, and there's this inner conflict. Do I do sports? Do I go professional? Most of the parents want them to go professional. I mean, in terms of like white collar jobs, and sometimes what they want to do is sports. But I think that they are not mutually exclusive. You can actually do both of them side by side, and you've proven that you can do both of them side by side. So I just wanted you to share with us first how sports helped your professional career, how your competition in sports helped your professional career, and how your professional career, I mean, the technical elements from architecture and things, how did that translate onto the court as well when you're playing wheelchair rugby? So how did sports impact your professional career, and how did your professional career impact your sports as well?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I guess the biggest one is respect. Like I said, growing playing junior team sports was something that I did at school, and we learned very quickly respect your elders, respect the referee, respect your teammates, and that's something that's transferable in life. We say our please and thank yous, and that they're just general good life skills. But most of the successful people that I know, especially from my school as well, like there are a lot of sporty kids that also did very well in their academic life. I'm a massive believer. If you look after your body and stay fit and healthy, then it goes a long way to sort of increasing your mind activity as well. So that's like some of the easy key benefits of sport is if your body's healthy, then you'll be healthy. You'll be more alert, more likely to be wanting to get involved with other things. So that's something that I'm very proud of that I can sort of still do. I still like to work out, even though I'm sort of finished with wheelchair rugby, at least for the time being. Then I still definitely know the benefits of keeping active and keeping fit. But then also playing team sports really helps those communication bonds. You might get frustrated with people, and it's how that you sort of relate and talk and work through those issues that you've got as a team can then sort of put you in good stead later on, because I'm sure every team person out there is oh god, what's this guy doing? He doesn't know what he's doing. And you come together as a team, or you work out your differences, whether that be against the coach or against another teammate, and you sort of work through a way to sort of come through and good, and that's so important in professional life as well. And then I guess the professional sort of career in terms of this help sport is just as much. Obviously, I touched on it briefly earlier, is the fact that you learn skills, you learn to be punctual, you hold yourself accountable, you're being employed to do a job, and that's something that you have to do, and that's something that I took into sport just as well. So I knew that I had targets to hit, and sort of, and because I'd learned those sort of things in the workplace environment, it just became sort of second nature, really, that was the way that it would translate into sport.
Great. I like how you said it. You learn things like respect, you learn things like being accountable, having targets, and that's just what happens in the sporting world as well as in the white collar professional world as well. I just wanted you to tell us some of your most productive habits, if you can share with us.
I guess it's probably I've tried really hard to make sure that I'm staying fit and active, and that's something that obviously I needed to be for my sport, but it's something that I've continued with afterwards. So I'm always sort of one that will be doing so many hours in the gym. Obviously, it comes at expense to sort of other aspects of life, like socializing and things like that. But I do think it's important to sort of get a bit more balance, and that's something I'm going to be working towards now. Is as I transition out of sport, is trying to get a little bit more life balance, I guess, as well as sort of keeping fit and then sort of managing my professional career. So that's something that we're going to be working on. But yeah, so habits would be sort of simple things, getting up, making my bed, making sure I'm prompt in time is something that I'm sort of always good at. I'll never be on time. I'll always try and be on time, and that was something that a teacher in school instilled in us. He'd lock the door on us if it was 9 o'clock. He'd be locking the door, even if it was sort of 5 seconds past. So yeah, it's in time, not on time. It's something that I've always sort of held on to, and then just sort of taking good notes as well is something that a colleague told me once in my professional career. So you never know when something might come back around again, and so taking good notes, especially for meetings and key things that have happened in my career, then I take notes, and I've done that in wheelchair rugby as well. If I've got something that I know I'm going to want to bring up later on, I'll at least write it down and keep a note of it, or so that I can refer to it, and perhaps in wheelchair rugby, it was more if something was really frustrating. Usually, I would say something if it was really frustrating, but then as I got more senior, I knew that needed to temper that sort of fire a little bit. So I'd write it down so that perhaps when I did get a chance to explain it, it didn't come from an angry place. It came from a bit more reasoned, calculated place. And that's something that I'd worked on, especially the last sort of 2-3 years of my playing career. So yeah, I guess that was sort of, those are the things that I sort of value.
Wow, that's great. I mean, I love how you started with making your bed. I just remembered one video from a popular US Navy SEAL, and it was like, everything starts from discipline. Like, the first thing you need to do is make your bed every morning. And that video went viral on internet. Then you also talked about punctuality. I mean, in time and on time. And that's something that many people do not know that is actually a very good habit. I mean, punctuality is a sign of reality, is what someone says. And you also said taking good notes. That's like journaling, reflecting on your experiences, rather than just saying things in the spur of the moment, taking time to put them down, think about them, have some layered thinking, make your good thinking become better thinking. And I think that's great. Just before we move on, I just wanted to show a video of you doing one of your burpee exercises to
So yeah, that was just lockdown. Couldn't get to the gym, so sort of try and do everything from home. Hence the trying to do my own haircut as well, which probably didn't look.
Yeah, I also did my haircut myself during lockdown. I mean, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. I made some mistakes, but yeah.
I learned very quickly that number 8 on my beard trimmer is not the same as number 8 on the hair clippers. So yeah.
I know they're different sizes, aren't they? Yeah, I've learned a lot from what you said so far. You don't know about actually taking notes. Just like you said, taking good notes is a habit. You talked about how looking after your body helps your mind, and I think that's something that many people overlook as well. I mean, there was one study that showed that people that actually had clinical depression, but they started doing exercise, they had less need for the antidepressant. So it's just things that we need to know, that our bodies are not just our bodies. We're made up of body, the mind, the spirit, and the more you look after one part of your body, it starts to translate to other parts of your body, in terms of how you bring your energy together, how you bring your focus together. So I think exercise is something that has really worked for you, and like you said, it helps your mind. And I mean, for me, sometimes I'm not a fitness buff, but I mean, even when I do little exercises, I just get ideas and I wonder, like, where did that come from? I think maybe it's just more blood flow coming to my mind, coming to my brain. I do not know, but I think I just agree with what you said. And you also mentioned that we're a lot tougher than we think. We are fragile, and I think that's something that we all need to know. Sometimes we think that we can't go on, but the human mind, just like you said, is capable of extraordinary things, as long as you have the mind, the will, and the burning desire. I mean, this has really been a very, very inspirational conversation with you. I know you're not all about sports and going to the gym, although that occupies a large chunk of your life. But what are some of your other hobbies? What are some of the things you do when you have your spare time?
It is a very good question. I mean, it's something that I guess I have struggled at with the last sort of 3 to 4 years, especially in the build up to the Paralympic Games, is sort of really making time for other things in my life. So, I mean, my he's got a young family, and I do try and get back and see them as much as I can. I mean, that's something that I love doing, is spending time with family, and like an amazing Christmas over this Christmas gone, just because I could go home and spend a lot of time with them, playing with the little kids and things like that. And that's something that I really enjoy doing. I'd like to get into something else competitive, to be honest. After wheelchair rugby's finished, I think there's part of me that needs that sort of competitive element in my life. I'm looking at a number of, I guess, little things that I'd like to try, and I'd quite like to go back to the beginnings and sort of learn something from scratch, rather than sort of having to put pressure on myself, like I was doing with wheelchair rugby. But yeah, and I'm keen, sort of like I said, I don't find the gym as sort of as like a have to work sort of thing. It's very much sort of like pleasurable, and I do get a lot from it. And swimming is another one that I'll try and do, just to sort of run it. It's sort of something that I can just switch off and think and sort of really take pleasure in. I guess other things would be just sort of city breaks, going around, looking at other architecture and that kind of thing. I enjoy, and I also read quite a lot. So my current commute is around an hour. It's about an hour door to door, but I spend a good sort of 40 minutes on a train or a bus. And everyone that I see is head down in their phones. Whereas I quickly, when I started the commute, I'm going to use this time productively. And I read while I'm on the train or the bus. Take a book with me. Sometimes it's a trashy fiction novel. Sometimes it's actually a self-help or autobiography or something like that. Something that I find really, really relaxing and also quite educational as well sometimes.
Wow. I mean, I like the points you mentioned about your commute and then you use that time to read. And I was listening to a book recently, and I can't remember this exact number, but when they were saying the number of hours that an average individual, or number of years actually, that an average individual uses on the road, I think was kind of equating it to the same amount of time you spend in university. I mean, your commute to work. So imagine if you use that time productively, you've probably earned yourself another degree if you use that time studying things that are relevant to your life. And I just love the fact that you raised that point. I've got a video of you that I clicked off from the internet, and that is a video of you swimming. Is that something you do a lot, swimming?
Yeah, I'd like to do more, to be honest. So that was very lucky, obviously, staying out in Phoenix when I was training and playing over there. They had a gym with outdoor pool, and the weather was absolutely amazing that you could do it outside all the time. But yeah, no, it's something that I like to do, and if and when I can.
Cool. Now, next question I'm going to ask you is probably a difficult one, but yeah, have a go at it. I remember from one of your blogs, you were talking about how you had to leave the finals of the championships and then come over to your brother's wedding. And for you, that was a tough decision. And I also went through your blog and you're talking about how you had to make some tough decisions about staying in wheelchair rugby. And you put a line there and you're like, I still have fear in me, but I hope this is the right decision. So my question for you is this: how do you make tough decisions when you are faced with tough decisions? What do you do, and how do you? I mean, you just said, for example, you've left wheelchair rugby as well, and that's a big decision as well. Like living at the peak of your career when the ovation is loudest, but you decided to make a decision to go into architecture full time. I mean, when you're faced with the tough decisions, what do you do?
I don't think any decision's been made relatively easily. I guess, like you said, they're tough decisions, and you have to think about them a lot. I guess the European Championships, like you said, in 2017 was a difficult one. It was my brother's wedding the same day as the final, and in the end, that one probably wasn't that difficult. I'm quite close with my family, and yeah, that was a memory that I wasn't willing to sort of give up. So I wanted to share that, or be part of his day at least. And that was a big one. I have missed weddings, and I have missed family events over the years that I do feel sorry for. Like there are big moments in life that I've had to sort of sacrifice in order to sort of try and achieve what I wanted to in wheelchair rugby, and that ultimately did pay off. I did win that gold medal, but it's tough, and that is probably the reason that I've decided to call it quit on the wheelchair rugby career is the fact that there were so many sacrifices that had to be made along the way, and now I guess I'm at a point where I can sort of just be content with what I've achieved in that sport, and not have to make those sacrifices anymore. So that was a decision. I guess continuing on after we lost our funding as well was a difficult decision. but that was helped massively by Christopher and Wright when they were sort of willing to sort of support me, I guess, in my career as an architectural technologist. So I was able to work pretty much full time since 2017. And then I've been sort of working and then taking time off to do sort of GB camps and wheelchair rugby. So that was a decision that was helped by some really gracious people giving me the opportunity to sort of work for them and compete at the same time.
Cool. Thank you for sharing your experience. And I kind of agree with you, because sometimes it's not really about what is the best decision. Sometimes you do not make the best decisions, but you make the right decisions for yourself. I mean, someone else might have looked from another side of the world and said, why would you miss the championships for a wedding? But again, it's not about what seems like the popular decision, but what is the best decision for you. And you had to go with your values, because you mentioned that your brother had been there all along for you, and for that reason you could not miss your brother's wedding. So yeah, sometimes you have to just weigh your decisions based on what is right for you at the time. What are your values? And I'm happy you said that as well. My question for you now is, how do you achieve a balance then between, we'll very quickly we'll be switching over to questions from the audience, because I can see a lot of questions on the feed. But just to ask you, how do you then achieve a balance between life and work, and life and work and sports, if I can put it that way? How do you find that balance?
I guess that's something that I'm always trying to improve on, to be honest, especially in sort of the build up to the games, and then certain things have to be sacrificed in order to sort of progress where you want. And that's sort of, I guess now what I'm trying to learn is to try and find that little bit better work-life balance than work sports, and then trying to fit in a little bit of life balance as well. But I mean, this picture in particular is after a tournament and after a win, so it's sort of the one time where you do get to sort of let loose a little bit and have quite good fun.
Cool. So you mentioned that you read a lot of books, sometimes fiction, sometimes autobiographies, self-help books. Do you have any favorite books or any favorite quotes or mantras? I mean, over the time, have you had anyone?
So I guess there's quite a lot that I'll remember, but in terms of things that stand out to me is probably different sports people. And my favorite sportsman would be Colin McRae, rally driver, who genuinely did have this just absolute desire to win and not give up at any costs. I think when he won his championship, he was actually, his biggest rival was his own teammate, and the team were actually trying to stop him, like by standing in the middle of the road, and he wasn't slowing down for them at all. And even towards sort of the end of his career, and people that were there talk about it. So as he'd come around the last corner, he was winning on time, but he clipped a cone and rolled the car. But as the car's upside down, he's changing down gears just in case it landed on its wheels. So have the presence of mind and the determination in something that 99.9% of the population would be absolutely terrified. I think that just shows what an absolute competitor he was. And that's someone that, I definitely look up to.
Cool. I mean, I remember Colin McRae, not because I know him personally, but I had a game on PlayStation and I was Colin McRae Rally. So I used to play back then. So, I mean, what would you want to be, I mean, at the end of your life, what would you want to be known for? When you talk about James Roberts, MBE, BSc, MCIAT, what would you want to be known for?
A good person, to be honest, first and foremost. I think, if people think that I'm a good person, then I'm okay with that. I don't need to be anything else or anyone else.
No, so I like how you made it simple. You just said you want to be known as a good person, and although you make it seem very simple, but it's not very easy to be known as a good person. I mean, a lot of people want to be known as famous, want to be known as rich, but to be known as a good person, I think that's really humble, because that says a lot about who you are and what you represent. And I know you do a lot of things, like you do a lot of volunteering for injured servicemen and women. You also share awareness about meningitis. I mean, giving back, how has that shaped your life? How has giving back made you a better person?
Yeah, so I've tried to help out where I can, but it's something important, I think, and obviously something I probably should do a little bit more of, to be honest. The last few years, especially because of the pandemic, there hasn't been that sort of stuff going on, I guess. But no, it is important to, if you can, give back, I think, and it's something that I'm hopefully doing a little bit more of.
So my final question for you before I go to some of the questions from the audience is, there's loads of people out there that don't know what to do, if I can put it that way. Not in the sense that they're clueless, but they have different options. For some of them, it could be sports, it could be going to some white collar job. For some of them, it could be entrepreneurship. And to be honest, because I was once there as well when I was young, you're just faced with crossroads and you really don't know what to do. And for some of them, they're already in some form of career and they're thinking about switching and things like that. But if you had the opportunity to advise the younger version of yourself, I would say probably the 21-year-old version of yourself, I mean, what would you tell yourself, and what advice would you give young people that are looking to progress in life?
Biggest advice I could give people is probably talk to other people. People, like, you go through life, you gather experiences, and that's the biggest thing is talk to people that have got experiences, have been through these things, and that's quite hard when you're a teenager and a little bit stubborn and think you've got it all figured out. But it's so worthwhile to sort of just sit down and talk. And I've been very fortunate, friends and family and people around me in my life and colleagues that have genuinely always sort of given me what I consider good advice, and that's sort of helped shape a lot of the decisions that I've made. Ultimately, it is your decision, but yeah, and something that I think has worked well for me is I've got a backup plan, I guess. Now it's not really a backup plan, but I had something else ready to go, I guess. The architecture, once the rugby had finished, I knew what I wanted to do as well. So because sport is fickle, it can chew you up and spit you back out, because sport careers are not long, especially if you're sort of like football or something like that. So I definitely always say focus on the education and have a backup plan as well, because yeah, it might not work out the way that you dream it will. So yeah, it's good to have something in the waiting in the wings.
Wow. Well, I think that's golden advice, because yeah, it is actually, there are people that have gone way ahead of you. They've had the experiences, they made the mistakes, and there's no point you just going and repeating those mistakes. And I think that's the importance of having people like mentors, like coaches. I mean, you're very lucky to be in the sporting context where you had coaches, but many people out there don't have coaches, don't have mentors. But I mean, that's golden advice you've given. Like, speak to people who have experience, and that's part of the reasons why we do this. Like, bringing people that have had experiences that you might not have had just yet, but you can learn from their experiences, and it helps you. When you have that experience, you move on to a higher level, and you're moving from you're talking or you're thinking from a place of experience. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm just going to look through the comments and see if there's any question that we might have left. There's a question from Leslie, and she said, "Did you have a tribe of family and friends?"
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my family's always been incredibly supportive, but in a way that sort of, I guess, from they'd all, like, my dad's always sort of instilled a really good sort of work ethic. I think even when we were kids, I mean, I can remember pushing the lawnmower around the lawn even before it was probably barely old enough to walk. So yeah, there was a good work ethic, and my brother and sister have been always sort of willing to sort of question my decisions and challenge me on things, which I've found really helpful over the years, because they genuinely, I believe, want the best for me. And if I've said, oh, I'm not going to go to work, I'm going to go and do this sport instead that pays relatively nothing, and they're like, oh, really? But yeah, so the challenging and sort support has really helped, and I've got a great bunch of friends that I went to school with that I think really highlighted it during the games. Actually, the incredible messages that I got were absolutely fantastic.
Wow. I think another question that I would want to share, because some of the other questions you've already answered with your talk, but I think this is also another good question from Leslie. And she says, what is something you would say to help someone who may be at rock bottom at the moment?
I guess is rock bottom is a good one, because when you are at rock bottom, like the hill seems so big to get out of, but it's all about focusing on those little wins, and challenging yourself like a small bit at a time, I guess. And then the bigger picture will start to come in. But yeah, it's little wins. It's doing the little stuff, and that'll make a big thing work.
Wow. Let's see. Is there another question that there's a question? What was your turning point? I think you mentioned that, and that was when you had to go to ITU for the second time. You had the cardiac arrest, and for you that was a turning point in your life. I think the other things are more like comments. Leslie says amazing accomplishment. Paul says, I must say your achievements are really inspiring to me. Amina says we're much tougher and not as fragile as we think. I take that with me. You're truly inspiring. You have very strong values you live by, and you've accomplished so much.
Lovely comments. Thank you very much.
This has been an hour well spent. Thank you. Thanks for sharing your amazing accomplishments. Truly inspiring. Love your heart. Great moderation. Thank you. Wow. Okay, there's something here. It's a question. How do you think rehab health workers can help out of the norm to inspire people in rehab? I think this is from Paul. He works as a rehab physician, and yeah, you talked about how the nurse helped you through that challenging time. So his question is, how can rehab health workers help people and help to inspire people that are in rehab?
I guess so. I went to rehab, a lot of my rehab in Gabowen Hospital, the orthopedic Robert Jones and Agnes Hunt Hospital in Gabowen. And they did a lot for their spinal unit patients, in terms of different sports, getting people out into trying. I think we did flying, day trip one day, which was incredible. Tennis. And it was just getting you to see a lot of things that were perhaps, this is still open to you. This you don't have to be shut off now from any other part of the world. Obviously, there's going to be challenges because we're in a very old country that has got a lot of steps in it. But I mean, there's so much you can do in terms of rehab, in terms of pushing people. And yeah, my nurse Jeanette there, she was key in terms of getting me into wheelchair rugby from the start, I think.
Cool. There's other comments. I think you mentioned this, focusing on the little wins will make the big things work. And also someone else said, focus on the little wins. I think we are just about 2 minutes to the end of our time. I just want to say a massive thank you on behalf of myself and everyone that's joined in for this opportunity. I mean, to pick your brains and learn from your insights, your stories, your experience. And I must say that you're truly a remarkable person. I wish you all the best in your onward career as an architectural technologist. And I hope to see you again someday. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you everyone for tuning in again. This is the 3rd episode. I'm glad that we're getting more people viewing live, and a lot of people also viewing the replays as well. Thank you so much. I think the whole aim is that we continue to live our lives with passion and with purpose. Make sure that you subscribe to the Passion and Purpose Hub on YouTube, and we'll see you again same time. The last Sunday of the month, actually. That will be the last Sunday of the month of February. We have another exciting guest coming all the way from Canada. So I hope to see everyone on the live stream. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. And as usual, as I always end, till we meet again, keep living with passion.